atmosphere. What's that? It's time for Infamous Queer!
Pride, 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 darling, darling, pride, pride 95!
Quick, everyone, what's the gay movie? You know, the one that you think of when you hear the phrase gay movie? No question about it. But what was the gay movie before Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal had uncomfortable, lubeless sex in a tent? In Australia, it was a unique, insanely fabulous celebration of three misfits prancing their way across a desert, but everywhere else, it was Philadelphia.
Don't turn your back on me, I don't want to be alone, love lasts forever.
Ah yes, Philadelphia, a movie that attempts to wring tears of sympathy for gay people out of every straight eyeball in the audience. It was written by a gay screenwriter, Ron Nicewater, so at least no one can claim it was invented by straight people who knew nothing about gay life. Philadelphia came out in a time after the AIDS crisis had wreaked havoc on the male homosexual population worldwide. Everyone in the gay community knew at least one friend who had died. Because of homosexuality being associated with a terrible disease, there was a sense of fear and distaste directed towards those in the LGBT community, and hence Philadelphia, which was the first mainstream movie about AIDS, and which attempts to elicit sympathy and understanding from audiences. So the movie apparently makes everyone cry, and it won Tom Hanks an Academy Award. But to modernise, is Philadelphia any good, or is it just a melodramatic, weepy piece of Oscar bait? Let's start this thing. We open on an extended music video.
Tell what I felt, I was unrecognizable to myself.
Now, this scene is kind of bizarre, seeing as this movie, despite the title, isn't actually about Philadelphia. In fact, Philadelphia barely appears in this film. For most of the movie, they're inside courtrooms and houses. It could be bloody well anywhere. But anyway, despite this sequence being an overly long establishing shot for a city we never see, it's still the best scene in the movie, even if it does remind me a little too much of this.
You should come on down to West 6th Street. It's the perfect place if you're a douchebag. Watch the poor people all wait for buses. Who the fuck still uses a payphone?
Ah yes, it's all downhill from here, folks. When we first meet our main characters, Andy, played by Tom Hanks, and Joe, played by Denzel Washington, they are arguing for and against a building site. Then immediately we forget all about that case, and we cut to Andy having a blood test in a waiting room ominously full of guys with AIDS. No surprises for how this is going to end up. Suddenly, the director is killed and replaced briefly with Aaron Sorkin, so we can see just what a hotshot lawyer Andy is. Aaron Sorkin is then fired and replaced with the reanimated corpse of the old director, and then we cut to Andy talking on the phone with his mother. You know, because he's gay. However, Andy is also a hotshot lawyer. Well, either that or a computer programmer trying to fix a serious case of blue screen of death.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
The next day, Andy goes to see the heads of the law firm, who are stereotypical as hell old white guys with cigars. Could these guys be evil? Oh no! One of the law firm partners notices that Andy has an ominous lesion on his forehead, caused by Kaposi sarcoma, a condition that is associated with HIV. Andy pretends it's just a bruise, but we all know it's worse because of the overwrought score. Then we have a terrible transition to 9 days later. Andy is sitting in his office, which seems to have been decorated by Sam Rayevich. Andy tells the secretary on the phone that a piece of important paperwork is on his desk and needs to be handed in.
Okay, now you're gonna want to apply this foundation as evenly as you can, okay?
Huh. It seems like Andy isn't just a hotshot lawyer. Going by the colour of his face, he's also a giant douchebag! While Andy's unnamed sassy gay friends and fag hag are making up his face, he suddenly has all of his organs explode and has to be rushed to hospital. The horror of this is conveyed with a dramatic zoom into his friend's face.
Does anybody want a bagel?
Who is this guy? It'd be safe to assume that he's probably Andy's partner or something. But no, we never find out who he is. He just got a dramatic zoom into his face because, I don't know, the cameraman got bored or something. Anyway, Andy's real partner, Miguel, rushes to hospital. Now, the music tells us that this is very dramatic, but I still think it could be improved. Rockwell doesn't actually have any say in Andy's medical care because he doesn't actually count as a relative or legal spouse.
Listen, I'm trying to help your partner here, okay?
Okay.
Hey, you're not a member of his immediate family.
I'm not?
I could have you removed from the ER.
However, being rushed to hospital isn't going to stop Andy from turning up to work and pretending that everything is normal. As he says,
Every problem has a solution. Every problem, a solution. Every problem has a solution.
what the hell? Did he contract insanity as well as AIDS? Remember Joe, that random starch guy from the beginning of the movie? Well, it turns out he's also in the same hospital watching his child being born. He is then contacted by Andy, who comes into his office the next day.
Innocuous.
How are you? What happened to your face?
I have AIDS.
Well, that's to the point.
Oh, look at this. You have a new baby.
Yeah, little baby girl.
Oh, it's a girl, huh? Congratulations.
Yeah, 1 week old.
Kids are great.
Way to sound convinced! So it turns out that Andy was fired by the cigar-toting white guys for allegedly misplacing the document that he briefly mentioned earlier. Wow, way to sit 5 kilometres away. Who the hell designed your office? The creators of Alfie's Home? The cameraman must have gotten bored because we then have another dramatic zoom into Andy's face. I'm so shocked! Andy suspects that the evil lawyers fired him for having AIDS and misplaced the document accidentally on purpose to cover their asses, but Joe is frightened of contracting AIDS from being in the same room as Andy, so he tells him that he can't take the case.
I'm sorry about what happened to you. It's a bitch, you know?
Diplomacy, thy name is Joe. Joe then goes to the doctor because he's worried that he's contracted AIDS from breathing in Andy's poisonous AIDS air and touching his HIV-positive hands. The doctor tells him how AIDS is actually transmitted and thinks that he might have actually done something to put himself at risk of contracting the disease. But no, Joe was just scared of handshakes. So we cut to Joe's home and family and we find out that, surprise, surprise, Joe is a big homophobe.
You have a problem with gays, Joe.
Nah, not especially.
Yes, you do. How many gays do you know?
How many you know?
Lots.
Like who?
Karen Berman, my Aunt Teresa, cousin Tommy, who lives in Rochester.
Aunt Teresa is gay? That beautiful, sensuous, voluptuous woman is a lesbian?
Duh.
Since when?
Probably since she was born.
Stay away from your Aunt Teresa, too. You hear me?
Joe, don't say that to her.
Think about it. Those guys pumping up together, trying to be macho and faggot at the same time. You know, I can't stand that shit.
Okay, so the implication here is that we, the audience, are supposed to identify with Joe, who is a successful family man who just happens to fear the gay with an all-consuming passion. And this is the problem! Now, from my experience of homophobia, you can tend to expect this kind of knee-jerk, ew, gays are yucky, reaction from 13-year-olds, insecure idiots, and bigoted old grandparents, not from well-adjusted, tertiary-educated lawyers. This movie came out in 1993, when I was 2, so I can't exactly vouch for how homophobic or liberal the average person at the time was, but by today's standards, Joe just comes across as a giant asshole. Joe then goes to the library because he needs to
Read up on the law more.
He's also eating in the library, which just reinforces my opinion that he's basically a 13-year-old. It turns out that Andy is also in the library, reading up on AIDS-related cases and making everyone uncomfortable for existing. The librarian starts hassling him when he's suddenly rescued by Joe. Andy couldn't find a lawyer to represent himself in his unfair dismissal case, so he's decided to try and represent himself. Joe has obviously decided he's going to work for Andy, and 6 weeks later he serves Charles Wheeler, the evil lawyer, with summons. After Joe leaves, Charles bitches to the other partners about Andy's evil gay ways, because after Joe's anti-gay rant, we needed an even more insanely homophobic character to make Joe look liberal and grounded in comparison.
Andy brought AIDS into our offices, into our men's room. He brought AIDS to our annual cocktail family picnic.
We ought to be suing him, Bob.
Andy then goes to talk about a possible court case with his family to make sure they'll be okay with it. They're more than okay with it because they're a movie family and they think he's 100% fantastic in every way.
Andy, the way that you've handled this whole thing, you and Miguel with so much courage, I don't believe there's anything that anyone could say that would make us feel anything but incredibly proud of you.
We've just jumped from one end of the homophobia spectrum to another. Hey, wait a minute. Isn't this movie called Philadelphia? Isn't it also set in Philadelphia? Well, so far we've only really seen interiors, so quickly, before everyone forgets, let's have a giant establishing shot complete with a dramatic spinning zoom on that statue of that hand-wang guy. Turns out that the establishing shot took so long that the movie suddenly jumps forward in time 7 months to a courtroom scene. Joe seems to have forgotten that he's representing Andy in an unfair dismissal case and is instead thinking about his lunch.
In all honesty, I was delighted with certain aspects of Andy's effort, but in general, I found the work to be merely satisfactory.
Do you agree that a bologna sandwich is a satisfactory meal, whereas caviar and champagne, roast duck, and baked Alaska, that might be considered a delightful meal?
We object. These gastronomical comments are irrelevant to these proceedings, Your Honor.
No, they are not irrelevant. Your Honor, 5 months ago, this witness characterized Andrew Beckett as caviar. Now he's calling him a bologna sandwich.
Outside the courtroom, people are protesting, although whether they're protesting Andy's case or Joe's bad Humphrey Bogart costume, I'm not sure. Look, I love a trench coat and fedora as much as the next man, but any time after 1950, you're going to look like you're trying too hard.
Do you think that homosexuals deserve special treatment?
Hell no. I'm standing here in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, the birthplace of freedom, where the founding fathers authored the Declaration of Independence, and I don't recall that glorious document saying anything about all straight men are created equal. I believe it says all men are created equal, Angela.
However, despite Joe giving that rousing fedora speech, it turns out he's still a big homophobe who has to demonstrate his disgust with gay people whenever it looks like he might be being nice to them.
Let me tell you something. These people make me sick, Philco. But a law's been broken. You remember the law, don't you?
At least we agree on one thing, Joe.
What's that, Joe?
Tutti Fruttis make me sick, too.
Yucky gay people, ugh! They probably go home every night and practice blowjob techniques on bananas, ugh! One might think that yucky gay people was confined merely to the idiots in the bar, but it's present in a more refined form in the courtroom, where we learn that Charles makes a distinction between a woman previously in his employ who caught AIDS from a blood transfusion, and Andy who got AIDS presumably from unsafe sex. We don't actually know at this stage.
So in other words, in your case, there was no behavior on your part which caused you to be infected with the virus. It was something that you were unable to avoid, isn't that correct?
I guess.
Thank you.
But I don't consider myself any different from anyone else with this disease. I'm not guilty. I'm not innocent. I'm just trying to survive.
History lesson. One of the first high-profile publicised AIDS cases was that of Ryan White, a haemophiliac who in 1984 caught AIDS from an infected blood transfusion and was expelled from middle school as a result. In 1984, AIDS was still seen as a homosexual disease and wasn't a priority for the government. Much was made of the fact that Ryan was a supposedly innocent victim of the disease as opposed to all those yucky gay people and drug users. Ryan himself rejected the notion that he deserved to be treated differently from other AIDS sufferers and said that anyone with the disease was just as much of a victim. Anyway, back to the plot. There's another testimony by a lady who worked at the law firm with Andy, but if we go into details about every testimony, we'll be here all day. So instead, let's waste some time by watching Joe going shopping for nappies.
How's the trial going?
Excuse me?
It's a great case. I saw you on television. I'm a law student at Penn.
Oh.
How you doing?
All right, how are you?
All right.
Saw me on TV.
Yeah.
It's a good school, Penn.
Listen, I just wanted to tell you, this case, it's tremendously important. And I just wanted to let you know, I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Look, when you graduate, you give me a call, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you very much. Listen, Joe.
Yeah?
Would you like to have a drink with me? I just finished a game and I could use a beer, you know?
No, I can't. My wife is...
I don't pick up people in drugstores every day.
What, you think I'm gay?
Aren't you?
What's the matter with you? Do I look gay to you?
Do I look gay to you? Joe, relax.
No, what do you mean relax? You know how to kick your faggoty little ass.
Take it as a compliment, jeez.
You know, that's exactly the kind of bullshit that makes people hate you, little faggoty ass.
You want to try and kick my ass, Joe? Asshole.
No, you're the asshole, buddy.
What the fuck? Okay, so before I say anything, here's how the scene should have played out if Joe weren't such a prize dickhead.
I don't pick up people in drugstores every day.
Oh, I'm not gay, but it's nice you were interested. Anyway, I've got to get going. I've got a lot of work to do on the trial. I mean, the guy asked Joe out for a drink in a polite way. He wasn't sleazy or threatening, but Joe reacts as if the guy suddenly started molesting him in public. Saying no thanks isn't that hard. I mean, for all I know, people in the 90s were this terrified of gay people, but I refuse to believe that anyone well-adjusted and mature would react this way to being hit on by a gender they weren't interested in. Can you imagine if people did this now?
There are guys in Australia who not only find me attractive, but they want to go out with me. What the fuck is this? What do they think I am? Some kind of homosexual? I'm a man. I'm a heterosexual man, and just because I watch horror films that are laced with blatant themes of homosexuality does not at all mean that I'm associated with these people. I mean, the very nerve that they're trying to compliment me just sends me into a blind rage and I gotta break something. Urgh!
Okay, well, back to the plot. One of Andy's colleagues talks about the missing file, which his whole case allegedly hinges on. Then some other guy gets up to testify. Much like other homophobes, Joe has a strange obsession with people's sex lives and decides to ask some rather personal questions in the court. Why? I don't know. I guess it's just because he's an asshole.
Are you a homosexual?
What?
Are you a homosexual? Answer the question. Are you a homo? Are you a faggot? You know, a punk, queen, pillow biter, fairy, booty snatcher, rump roaster? Are you gay?
However, because the viewers of this movie are also raging homophobes, Joe wants to enlighten us.
Because this case is not just about AIDS, is it? So let's talk about what this case is really all about. The general public's hatred, our loathing, our fear of homosexuals.
Speak for yourself! We then briefly cut back to Andy and his partner. When did we last see this guy? Oh wait, it was way back at the hospital scene. Joe gets to see his wife every 3 seconds, and yet Andy is the main character and we practically never see his partner. Really progressive there, movie. Anyway, Andy talks about how he probably won't live to see the end of the court case, blah blah blah. This movie is extremely long, so let's skip forward a bit with another stupid transition. Of course, it wouldn't be a gay movie without Andy and his partner doing something gay, and since we can't scare the straight people in the audience by having them kiss, we'll instead have a super gay party. Oh look! All of Andy's friends are there! We don't even know who they are! He's friends with Quentin Crisp? The Quentin Crisp? However, finding out what Quentin Crisp is doing at this party might be a bit too interesting for our tiny minds, so instead we're going to have a patronising sequence where Joe looks at Andy dancing with his partner as if to say, yes, gay people can dance too! This scene was much better when they did it in Sherlock Holmes. Afterwards, Andy asks Joe how he found the party. Quick, quick! It's been almost 10 minutes since we've last been reminded that Joe is a homophobe!
Let me tell you something, Andrew. As a kid, you're taught that queers are funny, queers are weird, queers dress up like their mother, that they're afraid to fight, that they're a danger to little kids, and that all they want to do is to get into your pants.
Phew, I was almost beginning to forget that he doesn't actually like gay people. But don't give up on the movie yet, because it's not long until Joe changes his mind. And here's how.
Do you like opera?
I am not that familiar with opera, Andrew.
Oh, this is my favorite aria. It's Maria Callas. This is Madalena. She's saying how during the French Revolution, a mob set fire to her house. And her mother died.
What the hell is the point of this? Why has the room suddenly turned into a dark room? And oh look, the cameraman seems to be bored again and has decided to entertain himself by zooming in on Joe's face.
I am divine. I am oblivion. I I am the god. Comes down from the heavens to the earth.
Oh right, he's translating the aria. I can do this too. No, wait, I can do one better. I'm going to perform the aria and translate it at the same time. I have lost it. Ah, who knows where it is? I can't find it. I have lost it. Miserable little me. Yeah, opera tends to be a lot stupider than you'd think. Well, that was awkward. Bye! Oh, and by the way, I'm no longer a homophobe for some reason. Bye! It isn't long before we're back in the courtroom, where Andy is testifying in a very alliterative fashion.
An awesome ability to illuminate the most complex of legal concepts to a colleague, to a courtroom.
Andy didn't tell his boss he was gay because he realised the partners were homophobic due to some off-colour jokes they were telling.
Hey, Walter, how does a faggot fake an orgasm? He throws a quart of hot yogurt on your back.
Wait, how does that even work? Yogurt isn't warm. Is the guy going to be carefully warming some yogurt on a portable stove while simultaneously engaging in anal intercourse? I think you're missing the point. Anyway, the firm's lawyer tries to discredit Andy by rigorously grilling him about the details of his personal life.
Have you ever been to the Stallion Showcase Cinema on 21st Street?
I've been to that theater.
What kind of movies do they show there?
Gay movies.
Gay pornographic movies?
Yes.
Do men have sex with each other in that theater?
Some men.
Have you ever had sex with anyone in that theater?
Who cares if you went to a porn theatre or not? I'm far more concerned by the fact that the courtroom seems to be sinking, taking the opposing lawyer with it. Well, either that or the cameraman is getting bored again. Anyway, the bosses, due to their experience with the AIDS-infected lady, recognised that Andy had AIDS because of the lesions on his face. The Dutch angle lawyer then tries to prove that Andy's lesions are invisible to the casual observer with a mirror! Joe, however, is not having this.
Andrew, do you have any lesions on any part of your body at this time that resemble the lesions you had on your face at the time that you were fired?
Yes. On my torso.
Your torso. If it please the court, I would like to ask Andrew to remove his shirt so that, everyone here could get an accurate idea of what we're talking about.
Objection, Your Honor. It would unfairly influence the jury.
Your Honor, if Andrew was forced to use a wheelchair due to his illness, would the defense ask him to park it outside because it would unfairly influence the jury? Come on, we're talking about AIDS. We're talking about lesions. Let's see what we're talking about.
I'll allow it. Mr. Beckett, would you please remove your shirt?
Howard Shaw, why is the music so inspirational all of a sudden? We're looking at a man's torso affected by the symptoms of AIDS. You might want to tone down the score a little bit there. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it turns out that the courtroom wasn't sinking after all. It was just that Andy was about to fall over and potentially die. The court case passes and Andy is awarded a huge sum of money, and then Joe goes to see Andy in hospital. They use this emotional moment to tell lawyer jokes.
What do you call 1,000 lawyers? Chain together at the bottom of the ocean.
I don't know.
A good start.
And Andy's partner isn't even there. Finally, they allow Andy some time with his partner. Andy says he's ready to die and then dies. We're then treated to a memorial service finely tuned to wring as many tears out of the audience as possible.
City of brotherly love, place I call home. And when I see the light, I know
And that's the end! So after all the hype and almost 20 years later, how does Philadelphia hold up? This movie did not age well. It's an important piece of cinema and not without merit, but if I knew someone who'd just come out and wanted to see some gay movies, this would not be the movie I'd recommend. Philadelphia essentially tells the story of a raging, ridiculous homophobe set to sappy inspirational music. Yes, society in general was a lot more homophobic in 1993, and this movie would have helped a lot of people confront their prejudices against HIV/AIDS sufferers, but to modernise, it just ends up looking patronising. Let's compare it to another infamous queer movie. Cruising, when it came out, was seen as very homophobic, as opposed to Philadelphia, which was seen as an important step forward against discrimination. But now, which movie comes out on top? I'd have to say Cruising. Why? Well, the main character of Cruising is a straight guy who isn't homophobic at all and actually attempts to understand gay people and stand up for their rights. Yes, the movie is sleazy and exploitative, but at least it doesn't make insulting assumptions about the audience's intelligence. In fact, Cruising was probably asking far too much of audiences at the time. Philadelphia, on the other hand? We're supposed to see through the eyes of Joe and identify with his juvenile, knee-jerk homophobia, and as an audience member in this day and age, yes, I find that insulting! This movie attempts to make us feel sorry for a man despite the fact that he's one of those scary gays, and that's insulting! Also, Philadelphia's attempt to depict healthy queer sexuality just seems cringing and cowardly by today's standards. Andy's LGBT friends are never developed as characters. Hell, Andy's partner is never developed as a character. We barely ever see the two as a couple, despite the fact that from the sounds of it, they've been together for even longer than Joe and his wife have. There are a few other bizarre creative decisions that nowadays don't look so good. The opera is a transparent attempt to make us feel for Andy's character that falls flat. Yes, opera can be a very emotional and powerful art form. That's opera done right, whereas here opera is just some stupid thing tacked on. Do they even explain why Andy likes opera? Is it something he shares with his partner, like the married couple from Making Love and their god-awful obsession with Gilbert and Sullivan? Or is it something that lets him give into his emotions, like Emma Thompson's character in Love Actually? Also, why is it the opera and not anything else in the story that helps Joe understand that LGBT people aren't scary aliens? It's not as if he thought, oh wow, a gay man loves opera just as much as I do. He doesn't even listen to opera! So yes, Philadelphia isn't so bad, and it was a very important movie when it was released, but if you're expecting something life-affirming or moving, I'd recommend that you go and watch something else. I was told this movie made everyone cry, but watching it now, it just seems ridiculous. And if you'll excuse me, I've got to go. I feel strangely tempted to go and smoke a giant cigar. Philadelphia,